The magic of reality. How we know what's really true. Richard Dawkins. The magic of reality. Chapter 3. Why are there so many different kinds of animals? There are lots of myths to attempt to explain why particular kinds of animals are the way that they are. Myths that explain things like why leopards have spots and why rabbits have white tail, but there don't seem to be many myths about the sheer range and variety of different kinds of animals. I can find nothing akin to Jewish myths of the Tower of Babel, which accounts for the great variety of languages. Once upon a time, according to this myth, all the people in the world spoke the same language. They could therefore work harmoniously together to build a great tower, which they hoped would reach the sky. I noticed this and took a very dim view of everybody being able to understand everybody else. Whatever might they get up to next, if they could talk to each other and work together. So he decided to confound their languages so that they may not understand one another's speech. This, the myth tells us, is why there are so many different languages and why when people try to talk to people from another tribe and country, their speech often sounds like meaningless babble. Oddly enough, there is no connection between the word babble and the Tower of Babel. I was hoping to find a similar myth about the great diversity of animals because there is a resemblance between language evolution and animal evolution, as well you see, but there doesn't seem to be any myth that specifically tackle the sheer number of different kinds of animals. This is a surprise because there is indirect evidence in the tribal people can be well aware of the fact there are many different kinds of animals. In the 2090s, the two famous German scientists called Ernst Mayr did a pioneering study of the birds of the New Guinea highland. He compiled a list of 137 species, then discovered to his amazement that the local Papuan tribesmen had separate names for 136 of them. Back to the myth. The Hopi tribe of Northern America had a goddess called Spider Woman. In their creation myth, she teamed up with Tawa, the sun god, and they sang the first magic song as a duet. This song brought the earth and life and being. Spider-Woman then took the thread of Tawa's thought, wove them into solid form, creating fishes, birds, and all other animals. Other North American tribes, the Pueblo and Navajo peoples, have a myth of life that is a tiny bit like the idea of evolution. Life emerges from the earth like a sprouting plant growing up through a sequence of stages. The insect climb up from their wall, the fish, the first and the red wall, up into the second wall, the blue wall, where the bird lived. The second world then became too crowded, so the bird and insect flew up into the third or yellow world, where the people and the other mammals lived. The yellow world in turn became crowded and food became scarce, so they were insect, birds, and everybody went up the first world, the black and white world of the day and night. Here the God had already created clever people who knew how to farm the fourth world and who taught the newcomers how to do it too. The Jewish creation myth comes closer to do justice to diversity, but it doesn't really attempt to explain. Actually, the Jewish Holy Book has two different creation myths, as we saw the previous chapter. In the first one, The Jewish God created everything in 6 days. On the fifth day, he created fish, whales, and sea creatures, and the birds of the air. On the sixth day, he made the rest of the land animal, including man. The college, the language of the beasts pays some attention to the number and the variety of living creatures. For example, God created great whales and every living creature, the movers, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after this kind, and made every beast of the earth, and everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind. But why was there such variety? We are not told. In the second myth, we get some hint that the god might have thought the first man needed a variety of companions. Adam, the first man, is created alone and placed in the beautiful oasis garden, but then the god realized that it's not good that the man should be alone, and he therefore formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. Why are there really so many different kinds of animal? Adam's task of naming of the animal was a tough one, tougher than the ancient Hebrews could possibly have realized. It's been estimated that about 2 million species have so far been given scientific name, and even these are just a small fraction of the number of species yet to be named. How do you even decide whether two animals belong to the same species or in two different species? Where animals reproduce sexually, we can come up with a sort of definition. Animals belong to different species if they don't breed together. There are borderline cases like horses and donkeys, which can breed together but produce offspring called mules or hinnies that are infertile, that is, that cannot have offspring themselves. We therefore place a horse and donkey in different species. More obviously, horses and dogs belong to different species because they don't even try to interbreed and couldn't reproduce offspring if they did, even infertile ones. But spaniel and poodles belong to the same species because they happily interbreed and the puppies that they produce are fertile. Every scientific name of animal and plant consists of two Latin words, usually printed in italics. The first word refers to the genus and group of the species, and the second to the individual species within the genus. Homo sapiens, wise man, and Elephas maximus, very big elephant, are examples. Every species is a number of genuses. Homo is a genus, so is Elephas. The lion is Patella leo, and the genus Patella also includes Patella tigers, tiger, Patella patus, leopard, and fata, and Fedra wana jaguar. Homo sapiens is the only surviving species of our genus, but fossils have been given names like Homo erectus and Homo habilis. Other human-like fossils are specifically different from Homo to be placed in a different genus. For example, Australopithecus africanus and Australopithecus afarensis. Nothing to do with Australia. By the way, Australia just means southern, which is where Australia name also comes from. Which genus belong to family, usually printed in ordinary Roman type with a capital initial. Cats, including lions, leopards, cheetahs, lynx, and lots of small cats, and the family Fidale. Every family belongs to a order. Cats, dogs, bears, weasels, and hyenas belong to different families in the order Carnivora. Monkeys, apes, including us, and lemur all belong to different families in the order Primate. And every order belongs to a class. All mammals are in the class Mammalia. Can you see the shape of the tree developing in your mind as you read this description of the sequence of grouping? In a family tree, a tree with many branches, which branches have sub-branches, and which sub-branches have sub-sub-branches. The tip of the twig and species, the other groups, class, order, family, genus, is the branches and sub-branches. The whole tree is all the life on Earth. Think about why tree have so many twigs, branch. When we have enough branches, the total number of twigs can be very large. That's what happens in evolution. Charles Darwin himself drew a branching tree as the omni picture in his most famous book on the origin of species. He sketched as an early version in one of his notebooks some years earlier. At the top of the page, he wrote a mysterious little message to himself. I think. What do you think he means? Maybe he started to write a sentence and one of his children interrupted him, so he never finished it. Maybe he found it easier to represent quickly what he was thinking in this diagram than in words. Perhaps we shall never know. There is other handwriting on the page, but it's hard to decipher. It's mentalizing to read the actual note of the great scientist written on a particular day and never meant for publication. The following isn't exactly how the tree of an animal branched, but it gives you an idea of the principle. Imagine an ancestral species splitting into two species. If each of those then split into two, that makes four. If each of them split into two, that makes 8, and so on through 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, etc. So you can see that if you carry on doubling up, it doesn't take long to get up into the millions of species. That probably makes sense to you, but you may be wondering why a species should split. Well, it's for pretty much the same reason as human language is split. So, let's pause to think about that for a moment.